Hello everyone. I'm back with the third part of the chapter, the last lesson, and this will be the concluding video, concluding part of the chapter. And till now, what we have learned that there are two main protagonists, M. Hamel and Franz. And M. Hamel was leaving his province, that is Alsace, because the Germans had taken over Alsace province, right? And little Franz, along with the old villagers were made to realize their follies, their mistakes that they have done till now by not giving respect to their language. Now it was their last opportunity, and they wanted to pay homage to not only to the teacher but to their mother tongue as well. Okay, so let's continue what happens further. But before that, I want to explain the last line of the last chapter. The line is, "We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with." This is very important line, and it says it is not only Franz who is to be blamed. His parents are equally responsible, and M. Hamel as well. How? I'll tell you. First of all, there was nobody at Franz's home to guide him. Parents preferred their children to work rather than going to the school and studying properly. Whenever they wished, they sent their children to the school, and they wanted their children to work in mill, in farm, so that they can get little money. And M. Hamel is to be blamed because sometimes even he had sent his students, Franz and other students, for his personal work like watering garden, okay, and other things. Therefore he is to be blamed. But right now, even though M. Hamel had given all these works to children, we are going to consider M. Hamel as a dedicated teacher, because he realized his mistake. He had done his work properly, okay, but sometimes he neglected. And let me tell you, as a human being, we do commit mistakes, right? But whether we realize it or not, that matters a lot. Therefore, the line says, everybody who were involved in this, teacher, students and parents, are to be blamed, are to be reproached for their follies. Let's move to the next para now. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills, so as to have a little more money, and I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? Students, I have already told you that parents are to be blamed, teacher, M. Hamel as well, and a student, of course, right? But here we need to understand that M. Hamel is to be blamed. It is because the time he thinks students had wasted in watering his garden, that time they should have used for studying. So here, when it was the last day, he realizes that even that few minutes, okay, in which he had sent students for doing his personal work for his convenience, right, he should have avoided that. And here, this is another plus point of M. Hamel, that he realizes his mistake and he wants to rectify it. But unfortunately, there was no opportunity then after. Let's proceed ahead to the next paragraph. Then, from one thing to another, M. Hamel went on to talk of the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest, the most logical, that we must guard it among us and never forget it, because when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. This particular paragraph is extremely important. First of all, M. Hamel, being a Frenchman, he talks high about his language.
See, he says that French language is the most clearest and the most beautiful language of the world. Now, do you think it is only French language which is clearest and logical? No, it is not. Because M. Hamel was French teacher, French citizen, it was clearest, it was beautiful language for him, right? But not for us, because our mother tongue is different. We will say that our mother language, that is, it could be Hindi, Bengali, it could be Nepali, it could be Bhojpuri. These mother tongues are important. These mother tongues are clearest and logical. M. Hamel further talks about guarding the mother tongue. Now, how to guard it? See, language can be alive till the time people are speaking it, till the time people are communicating in that. If we don't speak Hindi, okay, even after being Indian, then we will forget, right? We will opt some other language. So what will happen? Our mother tongue will die. Our mother tongue Hindi will die. The same thing is going to happen with French people also. And M. Hamel tries to explain this, that you should keep on speaking, even though Germans are planning to make us forget our identity, but we should be united and we should keep on speaking our language, so that their motive will not work, they will not be successful, their plan will fail to capture the mind of French people. This was a request of M. Hamel towards countrymen. And another important line out here is, when people are enslaved, when people are oppressed, or they are captured by some other force, okay, what happens then? As long as they hold fast to their language, as long as they cling to their language, they don't give up their language, they keep on talking in their language, what will happen? The language will unite them, okay? The language will unite them, and unity will give them strength, and because of that strength they can free themselves from the prison. That is what M. Hamel wanted to say here.
Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. All he said seemed so easy. I think, too, that I had never listened so carefully, and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give all he knew before going away, and to put it all into our heads at one stroke.
Students, M. Hamel wanted to use this opportunity to the fullest. He didn't want to waste even a second. And be it last day, everybody was so much and so much enthusiastic. Therefore, he wanted to use entire knowledge, okay, for their benefit. Whatever he had gathered till now, whatever he had learned till now, he wanted to pass it on to entire Frenchmen. Okay, so that is what we get to see from this paragraph. Let's continue with the next section.
After the grammar, we had a lesson in writing. That day, M. Hamel had new copies for us, written in beautiful, round hand. France, Alsace, France, Alsace. They looked like little flags floating everywhere in the schoolroom, hung from the rod at the top of our desks. You ought to have seen how everyone set to work, and how quiet it was. The only sound was the scratching of the pens over the paper. Once some beetle flew in, but nobody paid any attention to them, not even the littlest ones, who worked right on tracing their fish hooks, as if that was French too.
Here, the scene is so quiet. Everybody was engrossed in completing their work that was given by M. Hamel. Even the littlest ones, like primary students who are very, energetic, who wants to shout, who wants to make noise, okay, who, they don't want to listen to the teacher. But that very day, that last day, even they were able to understand the importance of the time. Okay, therefore, without making any noise, they completed their work, and even teacher was very patient along with his students. So here we get to see that everybody had understood the importance of language, and they were also interested to gather something so that it will benefit them in future. Okay, students, focus in this line which is spoken by Franz, because every time we get to see this particular dialogue of Franz in the examination. And this is: on the roof the pigeons cooed very low, and I thought to myself, will they make them sing in German, even the pigeons? See students, out here Franz is extremely angry. It is a sarcastic comment towards German people. What he wants to say by this line, let us understand. Here, pigeon signifies nature, and nature cannot be changed. And here, nature of Frenchmen is to speak in French language. The nature of Frenchmen is to follow their culture, and it cannot be changed however German people tries. Right? So that is what Franz wants to say. Whatever they will do, whatever means they will use to change French people to German, it is not going to be successful, because nature can never be changed.
Whenever I looked up from my writing, I saw M. Hamel sitting motionless in his chair and gazing first at one thing, then at another, as if he wanted to fix in his mind just how everything looked in that little schoolroom. Fancy. For 40 years he had been there in the same place, with his garden outside the window and his class in front of him, just like that. Only the desks and benches had been worn smooth. The walnut trees in the garden were taller, and the hope vine that he had planted himself twined about the windows to the roof.
Here M. Hamel understood that what was the plan of German people. As we have already discussed, that German people wanted to capture the mind of the Frenchmen. They had already captured the province. They had already captured the physical territory of France. Alright, but they wanted to govern the mind of French people as well. So it was a crafty plan of them. And after knowing this, M. Hamel could understand that this political enslavement is going to ruin the identity of Frenchmen, which made him very sad. Now, he did not have any power to exercise, right? He can just sit and see the things that was happening in front of him. Therefore, it shows helplessness of M. Hamel when he gazes from one place to another, one thing to another, right? And looking at him, Franz could understand that for 40 years he had been there. For 40 years, service he had given to the school, but at last moment he realized his importance. Till date he was cranky, he was rude to him, but last day he understood the real worth of M. Hamel, which made him sad too.
How it must have broken his heart to leave it all. Poor man. To hear his sister moving about in the room above, packing their trunks, for they must leave the country next day.
Mr. Hamel was displaced from Alsace to some other province of France, and it was his decision to go away. And not willingly though, he had to leave, because we know that German teachers had to replace French teachers the very next day onwards.
But he had the courage to hear every lesson to the very last. After the writing, we had a lesson in history. And then the babies chanted their Ba Be Bi Bo Boo. Down there at the back of the room, old Hosher had put on his spectacles and holding his primer in both hands, spelled the letters with them. You could see that. He too was crying. His voice trembled with emotion, and it was so funny to hear him that we all wanted to laugh and cry. Ah, how well I remembered it, that last lesson.
Everybody was engaged in their learning. Franz had lesson on writing, history, etc. And the small children, they learnt their phonetics, okay, sound words, ba, be, bi, bo, boo. Okay, in English also we have phonetics, in Hindi also, in Sanskrit as well. Okay, the same thing even children studied at that day. And old people, aged people who were there in the classroom, okay, they also gave equal importance to that learning, okay, mere learning, because that was not mere on that very day. It is because after that they won't be able to see their French books. Okay, therefore importance hiked on that last day of French language and French studies. And here we find old people who were studying along with small kids, and they were having their books in their hand, the primer, the primary book, elementary book, okay, and they were crying as well. They were crying because I have already told you they were too much emotional, okay, because of their language. Now at last moment they learnt the worth of learning a language because of M. Hamel. They were able to understand. And now it was a funny scene for Franz because being very old, he was crying. Alright, but he did not, he could not laugh also because the reason is vivid in front of him. Therefore, he became very sad. And not only that, on that very day, whatever M. Hamel taught to him, everything was clear. Everything was candid, clear to him, and it shows that he was capable of doing studies in a proper way, but because of negligence of parents, because of negligence of he himself, he had become a truant child.
All at once, the church clock struck 12. Then the Angelus. At the same moment, the trumpets of the Prussians returning from drill sounded under our windows. M. Hamel stood up, very pale, in his chair. I never saw him look so tall.
Now the Angelus rung, and it showed they had to wind up the class. M. Hamel was so sad, he was so lethargic now. He could not, speak a word. And looking at the condition of M. Hamel, Franz was able to understand that he was too much attached to his country, okay, and he was a dedicated teacher as well, and this made Franz respect M. Hamel more. Till now, he respected his teacher, that's true, but on the very last day, it manifolded. The respect was manifolded, it was multiplied. Let's read the last paragraph now.
My friends, said he, I. But something choked him. He could not go on. Then he returned to the blackboard, took a piece of chalk, and bearing on with all his might, he wrote as large as he could. Vive la France. Then he stopped and leaned his head against the wall, and without a word, he made a gesture to us with his hand. School is dismissed. You may go.
Right from the beginning, we have seen M. Hamel too much attached to his country, his countrymen, and language, right? Mother language. So here, when it was last day, he became extremely emotional. It was not in his hand to throw Prussians away, but it was in his hand to praise France. Okay, to write something about France. With all his might, he wrote, "Long live France, Vive la France." Okay, so it shows that he was a true patriot. He not only loved his country, his language, his countrymen, but um, when it was time, when it was tragic time, okay, that time also he showed his patriotism towards France by writing about his country with full might. At last, he could not speak a word, and by gesture, he said, "The class is dismissed and they may go home." But at last moment, we get to see it was a very emotional moment, and none of the country should be forced to follow somebody else's culture, somebody else's language. Okay, they should not be chauvinistic people. Chauvinism means to take excessive pride in one's own language. Okay, so here what had happened, Germans had taken excessive pride in their language. They said their language is best. Therefore, they wanted to implement the same in French province, right? And it was not only that, another reason was to govern their mind, to trap them, through their mind as well. Therefore, at last we get to see that Germans were chauvinistic people and not French people, because French people, they loved their language, but they did not go to implement their language to somebody else, but Germans did. By this we end the last lesson, and I hope you all had a nice time watching this video. And if you have any problem, you can drop me a message in WhatsApp number or in the comment section. I will be happy to help you out. And if you want me to improve anything, you can feel free to drop a message. Thank you.